We're not going to do. I'm surprised he didn't have everybody cut off one of their legs so they could stand on one leg, because Catholics stood on two. It almost got that silly, really, with, you know, taking down the statues and the stained glass windows. And but yeah, Karlstadt agreed with the Nicene Creed, but if the Catholics said it and had it as part of their worship, we're not going to have it. But everything in the Nicene Creed, all these groups, and even the American denominations, which is the Southern Baptists, the UCC, all believe in the Nicene Creed. It's just the best statement of faith, because it just talks about Jesus. I mean, it talks about God the Father and God the Holy Spirit, but it really talks about Jesus. The important thing that the church had to say was that Jesus is man and divine. That's what we talked about the first time. Really what the church had to work out within the first 40 years. And what they were able to work out, why the apostles were still alive. It's why we call ourselves an apostolic church. They were able to work this idea of Jesus was God. You know, John in his gospel. Jesus is the Word, and the Word was God. John writes, Jesus says, the Father and I are one. You know, it's just there. It's the understanding of the New Testament. That this man was God. And then the other thing in the creed that needed to be worked out, this resurrection. What is that? It was bodily. It's a bodily resurrection. We're all going to, St. Paul finally says, death is just a door. You know, kept saying it all the time 2 weeks ago. Death doesn't exist. Flat earth, death, gone. Get them out of your mind. Doesn't exist. Everybody you know, you speak of them as having died, that's incorrect speech. It's not just bad grammar, it's just, can't talk that way. It doesn't exist. It'd be like talking about the flat earth. Talk about someone who's died, you might as well talk about, well, I'm going to go on a long trip and I'm going to fall off the end of the world. Huh? The world's not flat, it's round. Death doesn't exist, it's just a door. So that's really all I believe the witnesses to Jesus. And I think, you know, we have a hard time with that. One thing I want to bring up, again, to pick on, and deservedly so, are Lutheran Church Missouri Synod friends. I grew up Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And again, I didn't leave the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod because of a theological epiphany. We moved from Chicago, Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, where I was confirmed in the 8th grade, down here to Hialeah, and the nearest Lutheran church was in LCA Church. So it's where we went. You know, the beginning of that post-denominationalism. So when I went to seminary, I went to an LCA seminary, which then became the ELCA. Let's talk about how people use the Bible when they're not using it as a witness to Jesus. And the best example of this with the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is the ordination of women. They don't ordain women, we do. Why are they wrong? Because they are. And why are they right? Because we are. And the best example I like to use about this is that I mentioned it in my first lecture, and I did it on purpose. Junia. Paul lists in Romans people he says hello to. And he lists people who are important in the church and friends of his, and, you know, just say hello to these people because, you know, they're in Rome and I'm not in Rome. And he says, and he lists these two apostles. One is Junia. It's just there. If a woman's an apostle on the same level as Paul and Peter and John and Apollos, how can we say a woman can't be a pastor? Then there's another person in the Bible, Priscilla, who Paul says is his fellow co-worker. He never calls her an apostle, but he calls her his fellow, equal. So at least she's as good as a pastor. I mean, then the other person, I mean, and there's other reasons, but just the other person, then I'm going to get to something. The other person is in the Old Testament. the judge, the highest ruler, Samson, Samuel, Deborah. A woman's the leader of Israel.
Ruth?
No, Ruth wasn't a judge. Deborah's. No, Amory knew it. No, I just wanted you all to say it. Deborah, the highest ruler of Israel, a judge. Deborah. You just see in the Bible women having the highest stature. You see in the New Testament, which is this crazy nebulous group without structure. It's not like you can have structure and have a headquarters in the New Testament, because then the Romans show up and kill everybody. But in this structure, you have women holding all the positions that men hold. It's just there. Now, because people who have power do not give it up well, you see in later manuscripts, which we know are later because they carry other errors, that Junia's name, a female name, is changed to the male name. Junius. We're going to make her a man. So you see in manuscripts like 200, 300, 400, she's a man.
Intentionally?
Oh, I would argue yes. I'd argue that people with power don't give up power. And definitely, when remember I said it hurt the church in so many ways. When the Roman Empire said Christianity is our religion. We're all Christians, they're all us, we're all one, yea God. All that meant was we're going to use this group that the people have great loyalty to further control and tax. Because that's all we care about, and that's Roman emperors. Because that's the government. And yeah, definitely, as it's getting copied, no women. I mean, men are in charge. That's just that society. And the society just took over the church in this regard. You can see it in the manuscripts. If you believe the Bible's true, which, I do and we do, it's just there. A woman's an apostle. There's another woman, a co-worker. There's another woman, a judge. Ruler is what it's translated judge, but it means ruler. To be judge is to be the leader of the whole country. It'd be like if we have a division of government. We have how stupid am I? Our three things: our executive and our Congress, legislature and judiciary. Well, the Jews only had the judge, who told everybody what to do. And Deborah was one of them. Boss of the whole show. El Jefe. Deborah. She was the man. So it just got taken over. You just see the society taking over the church. And inflicting whatever society says, this is how we should act. Saying, this is how the church should act. As opposed to the church being separate from society. I do not believe the church should fight with the government. By just running around the planet saying that we think the government should govern like this, that we're going to lose. They got the money. And we're not supposed to be doing that anyway. We're just supposed to be telling people about Jesus. And, helping people. Jesus, I give you one command. Love one another as I have loved you. He walked out of the door Thursday night and walked to a cross. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Helping people. Instead of figuring out, telling people what to do. It's just not what we're supposed to be doing. And that's what the government does. It's what they want to do. It's their mission they've created for themselves. Now, I sound very anti-government. I only am when it tries to use the church to further its means. And I'm against the church getting involved with it. Just stay away as a church. Stay away. Do what we're supposed to do and let it do what it does. Because it's going to go do things. And if people want to get involved as citizens, vote and join a political party, I mean, fine. I mean, join a political party, join a Harley Club, whatever you all want to do with your free time, you know? I watch zombie movies. I mean, whatever works for you. It's your free time. But you don't inflict that, you know, and get involved in the church, you know. I want to talk about this, you know, we got 15 more minutes. Regarding, any comment on the women's ordination, or you don't even care, you know, women get ordained? Doesn't matter to you?
This is the first I've ever heard about the confessions. I didn't grow up.
Lutheran?
No, I grew up in a Presbyterian church, but a Lutheran grandmother.
Oh, okay. Well, you've heard
Very
of...
strict Lutheran grandmother.
But the Presbyterian, you never heard about the institutes? Calvin or... Oh yeah, we're really post-denominational, which we are. I mean, it's fine, but that's, yeah, that's the confessions. I mean, and every denomination has their original writings. The Lutherans call ours confessions. So I'm just using that for all of them.
Maybe they.
And I would use it for the Roman Catholics too. I mean, the Roman Catholics would agree. Jesus is the Word of God. They'd agree with that. And they'd agree that the Bible is the witness to Jesus. How do you understand the Bible? We have the Pope, the Council, and the Church.
Well, I've heard it.
So we're all of our separation has to do with which confessions you go with. You know, who, you know, instead of just being one large group of Christian and then having a bunch of pastors running around, because no group's really able to do this. The one who does it the best, as I understand it, would be Islam. As I understand it, about 90% of the Muslims are one group. And they have maybe two main divisions then, but they have others, because I looked it up.
There's
So,
lots.
but yeah, I mean, but basically, they're not as divided as Christianity. I mean, Christians are divided. Part of the reason I'd argue the Christians are divided is because we came out of Europe, which is divided. And they just, we just have that mentality, that Western European mentality, but then we carried it to America and invented more divisions here. There's just something in us where Christianity just can't stomp out of everybody feels they have the right to start their whole group. But
what's wrong with that?
because it's not what we're about, being a bunch of different groups. We're about Jesus.
Yeah.
The witness to Jesus is the Bible, and we have understandings of the Bible, which, you know, are our confessions.
You know, Chris, to make you feel a little better, talking about confessions, I didn't really know the Augsburg Confession in the Book of Concord until I was an adult. When we went to confirmation, we learned the catechism. That was it.
Small.
Right?
Small.
Small. Oh yeah, small. But every word we learned. And
In German.
no, it wasn't quite that bad. My mother did, but I think I don't think all Lutherans are conversant with the Augsburg Confession.
Oh no, no. I mean, yeah. But the other thing I want to talk about is this idea of how the church gets involved in our society, how we relate to our government, and how the government relates to the church. We see in the Old Testament, and I use a word, and I'll use the word peace, because it's a nice word, for government. Government says it wants peace, or tranquility, or law and order, whatever words you want to use. But it centers around, to put it in, peace. We want people to live in peace. Not rob from each other. Go to Publix, you don't run out with the food, you pay for it. It's just law and order type stuff. I mean, and that is an important part of government. Paul, Peter, Jesus, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, to God the things that are God's. I mean, pray for the government. And Paul's saying pray for the government, and it's not like he's a Roman senator. He's in jail, and they're going to kill him in a couple months. But there has to be some semblance of order out there. And the Christian church is able to use the order to travel about, to tell people about Jesus, even though the government that's creating the order is killing the Christians. So, but there is something to be said about order, something to be said about the use of government, something to be said about to have peace. It's better than war and chaos. In the Bible, the Old Testament, you see, because in the Old Testament I use that, because you see people, living under government that's ostensibly theirs. Although the kings are never viewed as friends of God. Very often enemies of God. Ahab. But the kings and the priests, because the kings control the priests, because they control the purse, the money, they want peace. Then the other word to use, which stands for a lot of things, is justice. And justice is people treating each other correctly. Justice is not lying, not stealing, not abusing people. The prophets talk about justice. They talk about justice and righteousness. It's centered on caring for the orphans and the widows. That which is commanded most is caring for orphans and widows. It's just all through. It's through Moses and the prophets. The other thing is just don't take advantage of people. Don't charge interest. If someone's poor, this is in Leviticus, if someone's poor, don't charge them for food. You're not allowed, according to the Bible, people want to be Bible thumpers and change society. You're not allowed to charge a poor person for food. You just have to give it to them. And there's this whole idea of justice. Caring for the sojourners or travelers. You're just, God's people. God saying through Moses, you're not allowed to be mean to travelers. Travelers are at a disadvantage. Remember when they come through, even if they're in a caravan of 100, there's only 100 of them, there's a whole town of you. It's intimidating. You're not allowed to intimidate them. You're not allowed to abuse them. You're not allowed to cheat them. If you all are selling bread for a nickel a loaf, they get it for a nickel a loaf. Even though they're hungry and even though they don't have any choice. They get it for a nickel a loaf. So this whole idea of justice. And it carries through. You see in Martin Luther's day, the princes and the kings. The government's always talking about peace and all of that stuff. Because it ultimately involves, and I'm not against this, I sound like I'm not against it, but it ultimately involves, if I'm the government, I've got to control y'all. So there's peace and tranquility and law and order. And I'm going to take only a little bit of your money, and we'll take most of it from the other guy, by the way, so that I can control you. So that's, where government is, and that's the princes and the kings. They want the peace. Martin Luther in his writings, and you mentioned the Large Catechism, it's brilliant. The Large Catechism is brilliant. Especially, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. If you want somebody talking about how bad people are when they steal from other people, whether it's the little maid servant taking an egg, or all the bankers, and Luther talks about both of them. It's Luther. How they're just ruining Germany. You can just read. It's online. And you just take out Germany and put America, and it's like, man, was he here yesterday? It's just how the wealthy are grinding everybody up, and everybody up, while they're being ground by the wealthy, are bothering each other with the same behavior, just on a lesser scale, because they don't have the ability to be as mean.
Well, that's like the unforgiving servant. The
Yeah.
unforgiving whatever he was.
So-
Yeah, servant.
And, so Martin Luther's talking about justice. The goal for the Christians, act justly. He also says, for the princes and kings to act justly. And another great example within our lifetime, you can see it, the mayors, the governors, and the presidents all wanting peace, law, and order. And then, that's Martin Luther King, justice. And the greatest example there is a letter from Birmingham jail, when he's in prison in Birmingham. And he's clergy from Birmingham write him a letter to be more peaceful. Don't be disruptive. Because the Bible likes peace. It doesn't like disorder. And he writes back, the Bible likes justice. So it's about justice. And I think the church is best when it's doing the stuff to be put under the word and all the things that, helping people. The justice stuff. And I just don't think it should get involved with the government because the peace stuff needs to get done. It just does. We can't, we need a society whereby when I fill a grocery cart and people put it into bags, they know they're going to get paid for it. We just have to have that kind of stuff. And, government needs to do some stuff. But I don't like at all the government wanting for the church to help them do it. Meaning if you're a Christian, you're going to vote this way. I don't like that statement. I've never told you that from the pulpit. Never told you that in a Bible study. I just don't want, if you're a Christian, in this church, we all vote the way we vote. We all don't agree. And that's us. There is no litmus test, and you tell me how to pronounce that later, for how Christians should do things at St. Thomas regarding the government. Our test is, Lutheran Services of Florida, Lutheran World Relief, a Habitat for Humanity, every year go out, build a home, something like that. It's not even a test. It's just what you do. And I just wanted to close where I think as the church becomes this non-denominational thing, and which is fine because everybody haranguing on about confessions didn't work. It didn't hold people to anything. So, as we act as Christians in the church, we just do the things of justice. Now, we need to say, and this is what I want to close with, I've never wanted to act like these people in previous generations weren't marvelous Christians. Look around Miami. Baptist Hospital, Mercy Hospital. Where I grew up, Lutheran General Hospital, up north and things like that. Christians were always doing, the Methodist Children's Home. They were always doing these justice things. It's just for previous generations, and some people still, they want to have the denominations be more important than I would. And that's their choice. Lutheran Church Missouri Synod doesn't know about me, and if they did, they wouldn't care. They're doing their thing, and they're doing their justice stuff. They're helping people, they're building hospitals, they're doing that. So it's not like, so it isn't like those people who disagree with me on the practice of the church regarding the worship or things like that are disagreeing on the real important stuff, which is Jesus is the Word of God, the Bible's the witness, let's go out there and do stuff. And people have always done that. You can see that through every generation in America, and every country. You just see it here, wherever you live. I'm sure wherever you grew up, there were hospitals. If it was a strong Methodist area, Methodist hospital. You drive through areas of the South, it's Methodist hospital. Around here, it's Baptist. You do it where I grew up, it's the Lutheran hospitals. Just about everywhere. There's Mercy Hospital, Catholic Hospital. And then, it's Mount Sinai Hospital here as well. You go to Miami Beach, you got Mount Sinai Hospital.
Yeah.
So people are always doing
What are you
that.
saying about this?
That they're good
That's
things.
the good stuff. I don't want all the negative things I'm saying about denominationalism
Right.
have us leave here and think, gee, all Christians have done since the 1500s is bickered about the real presence.
Yeah.
No, theologians do that, and that's not even what they do with their lives, because seminary professors that I've known were some of the most giving, kind, and, do-goody type people. But yeah, they have theological ideas, and they hold to them strongly, and they'll slam beer down about them and argue about them heartfelt, but we're still out there doing stuff. And that's the
And
important
Pastor's
thing.
saying that good comes out of even the differences that we have.
Well, it
I
is,
believe
Yeah,
what I'm
because
really saying
transcends it.
is
Transcends
that
it.
we've been divided into these denominations hasn't stopped us from doing what we're supposed to be doing. I'd argue a lot of it's been a waste of time, but it hasn't stopped us. So, and then so much of it is, like you said, you didn't even learn it growing up Presbyterian, you didn't even learn it growing up Lutheran. I mean, it's just, a lot of it's just a seminary level for pastors, and then we have courses every other year on what we learned, and some people show up. Well, thank you. Any
Thank
questions?
you.
Thank you.
Any
No,
questions?
this was
Any
excellent.
thoughts?
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.